All right, everyone. We're back for episode 49. 49 of Stub Luv Live. And we have two great guests on, Chase Maz of Ticket History and Tom Daly of TKD Tickets. Let me try to get them on. It's always a little technically tough.
Hey, what's
There
going
he
on?
is.
How you doing?
Dig the hat. Dig the
Hey,
hat.
man, gotta represent.
Heck yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I can get Tom on here. I saw Tom join, but I don't see that Tom requested an invite. Let me see if I can request an invite to Tom.
We've been on so much. We should know how to do this by now, right?
I got him. I got him.
There he is.
Howard, Chase, what's up?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. All right. I can hear you both. Looks like we got a lot of people on tonight. Wow. A lot of big names. I see we have Brandon Johnson, Scott Foraker, Stubs by Mike. We got Zitter family folks, Rob Pagan, Sean Doherty, Justin Wheelers. Thank you all for the support. Thanks for watching. So episode 49, this is a big one. I always like when I have you two guys on. I got to tell you, I kind of feel like you make me earn it because you guys are as big as they come. You guys know what you're collecting. You guys have a focus, and you came to me and said, "Why don't we talk tonight about social historical tickets that have intersected sports?"
Yep, absolutely. No, really important show.
Absolutely. A lot of history that I had to study up on. I was telling Howard.
We were like back in high school, but the great Darren Ravel has always said that the reason why he collects tickets is because they tell a story. And what better than to collect these kinds of tickets that we're going to talk about tonight, who tell such a unique story. It's all about the story. And again, most of these tickets are telling multiple stories. They're telling us a story about history, and they're telling us a story about how that historical event impacted sports or a sporting event. So who wants to start? Because we've got a lot of great tickets to show and a lot of great tickets to talk about.
I'll let Tom go.
All right. Well, then I will start with my 1968 Olympics ticket because as I was going through this, there's a lot to unpack here. I learned a lot when I was looking into it. So 1968, the Summer Olympics, there you go. So Mexico City was awarded the Olympics in 1968, and they were the first Latin American country selected to host the Summer Olympics. And at that time, there were a group of people in Mexico that were really against Mexico spending money on the Olympics and were against the oppression of the Mexican government. And those kind of protests started to form into what was called the Mexican student movement. And there were a lot of peaceful protests that went on, and the authoritarian Mexican government didn't like that. So they didn't want that story being part of their Olympics. So 10 days before the Olympics were to start, there was a protest scheduled, and the Mexican government went in and they wounded and killed the protesters there and essentially shut down that movement. So that movement ended. It was called the to the Tlatelolco Massacre, and I'm sure I butchered that, but that sort of set the stage for going into the Olympics, and that story was not really widely covered by the press covering the Olympics. So then I think that really sets the stage for this this event, the 200 meters, when Tommy Smith won the race, won the gold medal, and John Carlos won bronze. And you see the picture here, the Black Power salute that was given to protest the civil rights and how blacks were treated in the country, in the USA. But you see Peter Norman there as part of the protest. So all three of them were wearing human rights medals. And when you hear Tommy Smith talk about it, he talks about it as a human rights protest, not really a Black Power salute. And I think when you hear about the massacre that happened 10 days earlier, before the Olympics, it kind of brings that more into light, into that meaning. And when Tommy Smith talks about it, he says, what did you think was happening? And when he says, I thought I was going to get shot, you can understand why that was going through his mind. So
it's kind of the picture, Tom, is such an indelible image in everyone's mind from that Olympics. I mean, I think if you asked people what came out of that Olympics, what's the one memory, it's this picture.
That's
the meaning behind this picture and what was going on in the United States at the time. So for us ticket collectors to be able to pick up a ticket to one of the most memorable Olympic events ever, and just to have it surrounded by the history of our country, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. Tom, what are these tickets going for now? Because I know, for a while they were very cheap, then they became pretty expensive, and now I think they've come down a little bit, but settled at a fairly moderate price.
I think if you're patient, you can get one for, I don't know, between 1,000, 1,500, something like that. I noticed for a while they weren't trading at all, but I think once a few sold, then a lot more popped up, it seemed.
Yeah, and I don't think there are a ton of them though, Tom. I think we're talking a relatively small population. I mean, I haven't looked, but 20, 30. But what an indelible mark on the history of this country, on the Olympic Games, and candidly on ticket collecting.
And I think so. Fab and I have been talking how what a great design this ticket is as well. So the Mexico, the typography that Lance Wyman did, it speaks Mexico. So you see this, you think of the Olympics, and it's really it's a great ticket. And I think for people building a ticket collection, this is one to look for.
I agree. Chase, what's up next? What do you got, my friend?
Oh man, hard to follow that one. I
You'll
guess,
do it.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna go a little bit like out on a limb here, and I'm gonna stay with civil rights. So this is a ticket from a Boston Celtics game, and the date on it is April 6th, 1976. And you might think, what could have possibly happened at that game, or why is that ticket even important? Well, it was important to me because, the day before on April 5th, something pretty amazing and insane happened. And the photo from it is, one of those things that I had never seen anything like that before. And so the photo is titled "The Soiling of Old Glory." And I'm not sure if you have the photo, but I have I have the book, and it's on the cover.
I wasn't able to pull the photo, but yeah, you could show
it's
the cover.
on the cover of the book. So that happened. I mean, it's just shocking. That happened on April 5th, 1976, and that happened really right outside of the Boston Garden in City Hall. And what was going on at the time was there was desegregation busing protests that were happening. And so people were, for desegregation busing, and people were against it, obviously. and they were fighting each other. And at the time, a lawyer named Ted Landsmark, who was also a civil rights activist, was simply walking through the area of City Hall and was attacked by a few young white boys, and they beat him up pretty bad. And while one of them was picking him up, the other one is seen kind of swinging the flag, and at that moment it kind of looks like he's about to kind of spear him with the flag. So it's just an absolutely incredible image. It won the Pulitzer. It was taken by a gentleman named Stanley Foreman. So, why I think that ticket is important is because, the newspapers the morning of April 6th were all carrying this photo, right? It was, front page pretty much everywhere. And the Boston Celtics had a game that night. And, they played a game, and then they ultimately ended up winning the championship that year. And basically were right outside City Hall, like having a parade, like just a few months later, after this incredible event happened. And so, it kind of just that intersection of everything that's going on in the world and sports behind it. And then, like obviously some people were probably still pretty upset, but other people were using the Celtics, everyone kind of coming together and rallying around the Celtics and happy that they won. And whether you're black or white, I think, you're a Celtics fan, you're a Boston, resident. And, for me, that's just kind of that snapshot moment in time of two events kind of colliding, that if someone attended that game, they might not even have thought about it, but in the morning they were heading to the game, that was on the front page of the newspaper. And so someone still went to the game and, hopefully enjoyed their time there. But, kind of incredible to think about that was going on, behind the scenes of all that.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And again, most people who went to that game had no idea of the correlation between the two.
Yeah.
So, it kind of shows you how a very benign ticket to a fairly innocuous game becomes incredibly collectible to at least the three of us. But
Yeah, exactly.
certainly
Exactly.
more. So I guess I'm next. I have to go next. I don't have as many as you guys have, but I did pull this one. Um, this is 1975 Cleveland Indians opening day. And of course, this is the first time that an African American, the great Frank Robinson, managed a Major League Baseball game. So, you head to Cleveland, you're there to see the game, it's opening day, everyone's celebrating opening day. And at the same time, you got to witness history, because not until 1975 did a black man manage a Major League Baseball team. On top of that, Frank Robinson inserted himself into the lineup, and actually wound up hitting a home run that day. So you have one of the 500 home run hitters, a Triple Crown winner, an amazing baseball player and Hall of Famer, who is also the first African American to manage in the major leagues. He actually wound up being the first African American to manage a game in the National League as well. So the Indians being in the American League, he also managed for the San Francisco Giants. And I think in 1981, he broke that milestone too. So in my opinion, just an amazingly cool ticket. I did some research on it, and it just talks about the fact that, Frank Robinson, first African American, Hall of Famer to manage in Major League Baseball. So
Yeah.
very cool. Probably most people who went there didn't think about it. Maybe some did, but I'm sure a lot didn't. Cool ticket, tough ticket, not a real expensive ticket. I mean, I think I've seen them sell for as low as a couple $100, and I think I've seen them sell for $500-600. But I mean, to put away a piece of history like that, it's just doesn't get any better in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's amazing that it took till 1975 for that to happen, right?
it really is. It really is unbelievable. All right, Tom, you're up. We got to keep moving. We're
All right.
gonna be here forever with all the stuff we have.
I'll use this one then. I saw your April 8th date. So this is 26 years earlier. So this was Jackie Robinson and the Brooklyn Dodgers, did their spring training, and as was customary, they would travel north, and they stopped in Atlanta to play the Atlanta Crackers in an exhibition game. And there was a lot of protesting, in Atlanta. It was, very segregated and threats of the KKK. But Branch Rickey said, "This is my team, and we're going to play ball." So Jackie Robinson and the Dodgers played the Crackers to a sellout crowd, and a very peaceful crowd. And this was the first integrated sporting event in Atlanta. So to me, it's amazing that it was only 26 years from this to what you just showed, Howard. I mean, that's really not much time.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think we have a long way to go still, but still a lot has been accomplished. And I have to tell you, Tom, every time you show that ticket, it excites me. I've never seen one before, but it's so amazing. It's so historical. I don't know what the value of that ticket is, but I can tell you I've never seen another one. So, Tom, that's just an amazing piece that you have there, and kudos to you.
Thanks, Howard. Yep, it's one of my favorites. So, and Chase, I think it's up to you now. So we're like rapid fire here.
No, this is good. Yeah, we got to show as many as we can, right?
Absolutely.
So I think this, whole intersection thing, obviously, people always say, like, you remember where you were when certain events happen, right? And one of those has to be when everybody, well, not everybody, where everyone was when they landed on the moon. So we have July 20th, 1969 is the date of the moon landing. And, some people happen to be at a Yankees game that day. So, there's the ticket from the game, and Bob Shepard, the voice of God, as we call him, as us Yankee fans and Giants fans call him, he announced that they landed on the moon, and they put it on the scoreboard, and there was a big cheer at the crowd, and everyone was extremely happy, and obviously this was set in motion by JFK, and it was the strength of America to make that happen, and yeah, everyone at the game was obviously going crazy.
So the cool thing about it, Chase, is not just you as part of ticket history, but a lot of other people have really taken a liking to collecting tickets from that day.
Yeah.
Because although Bob Shepard and the Yankees probably have the most memorable report of that event during the game and putting it on the scoreboard, there were other games going on. So there were other teams that put messages on scoreboards, stopped the game, players came out of the dugout. So this has become incredibly collectible. So there's people that I know that are trying to collect every one of those games from that day, and just because how historical it was.
Yeah,
First time we ever put
absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, imagine being at a game when that happened. I mean, it wasn't you didn't have social media back then either, so it's not like you could pull out your phone and read the news quickly. It was on the Jumbotron or whatever, and you got an announcement from the PA announcer.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so am I up?
Yes.
Am I next? So I'm gonna move into this one. Pretty cool. I was able to pick this ticket up a couple years ago. It's a ticket from the Battle of the Sexes. Bobby Riggs versus Billie Jean King. And what's so cool about this ticket is it was a real mark about the feminist movement. And the interesting thing about Riggs and King, Riggs being the older player, but the male player, and always saying out loud that males were the dominant sex, and that there was no way that even a younger, potentially more talented Billie Jean King could ever beat him in a match. They go to the Houston Astrodome. There's pomp, there's circumstance, there's media coverage, and what better way for women and the feminist movement to grow than having what happened, Billie Jean King beating Bobby Riggs. Rare ticket. I'm not so sure why it's so rare, because there were a lot of people at the Astrodome. But over the years of ticket collecting, I chased that ticket hard for years and couldn't find one, and then got lucky enough to find one just luckily on eBay. And those tickets, the few that have sold for really exquisite amounts of money. So I'm lucky to have it. It's in my collection. I've always kind of thought about getting Billie Jean King to sign it, but it's just so cool the way it sits right now that I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that I want to crack it and risk it.
Yeah, you
But
know where I stand on that.
I know it's too perfect to crack. So great moment in our country. Great moment for the feminist movement, and something that I think ticket collectors really covet. So, Mr. Daly, you're up.
I'm up. And that is a tough ticket. I know I was looking forever for one of those. I was lucky to find a couple stubs, but yeah, that's not easy to find. But
A couple stubs stapled to a Type 1 photo. So let's clarify that you found something pretty good.
So, well, it's all about finding the tickets, right? So I'm going to link to JFK. So this was a ticket 2 days after the JFK assassination. So that was, you can imagine it was a big event in American history, and I think America stood still when that happened. And Pete Rozelle was faced with the decision of whether or not to play football games on that Sunday. The JFK was assassinated on a Friday. Football games were on a Sunday, and the AFL didn't play games. The NBA and the NHL did, but Pete Rozelle made the decision after consulting with Press Secretary Peter Salinger, and they played the games. And even more about the history, then I think it was about 40 minutes before kickoff that Lee Harvey Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby. And this is the ticket to the Giants game at that day, and this was the game that Pete Rozelle actually attended 2 days after the assassination. So this is a ticket that's not that hard to find, but very collectible, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. I actually collect some of them, and I've missed on a few, but I have a few of them. I think Pete Rozelle has prior to his passing said it was the worst moment or worst decision of his tenure as commissioner of the NFL. So great historical significance to those tickets, that grouping of tickets, and certainly a significant and meaningful impact on sports.
Yeah, the Army Navy postponed, so that's another big one that people go after.
Yeah, for sure. Great stuff. All right, you're up, Chase.
Yeah. So let's turn it ahead to 1972. We have the World Chess Championship. This is match 21, the final match between Spassky and Fischer. So you're thinking about Cold War, Russia versus USA. The World Chess Championship in Iceland, there was, 24 years, I think, of Soviet domination up until that point. And Fischer wins the best of 24 matches and becomes the first American born in the U.S. to win the World Chess Championship. So, insanely historical moment. One of those things that is, I think, will go down in the history books. And a lot of people know that. They don't really follow chess, but they definitely know that event. And Tom actually sent me an article today that the Chess Association mentioned that Spassky actually just recently passed away.
Yep. So it's kind of the real Rocky versus Drago of chess.
Yeah.
And stood for a lot back then. That this was Cold War time and East versus West, and so very memorable, very important. very important event and a great ticket to
Yeah,
own.
when
And
Fisher got back to the States, I mean, he was just absolutely celebrated as like an American hero, and then ultimately kind of disappeared, and kind of became a hermit, and no one really heard from him for a long time.
yeah, great ticket, great moment, certainly historical, certainly has a lot of meaning. My next one, pardon me, is the 1956 Sugar Bowl. Um, and that's just a great ticket because it was the first time that an African American had played in the Sugar Bowl. So it's the integration of the Sugar Bowl. And I love the ticket. It's cool because, PSA puts, on the label Bobby Greer, first back black player. And it's incredibly interesting to go ahead and collect that ticket. But I think if you own the 56 Sugar Bowl, you must also own the 1955 Sugar Bowl, because the 1955 Sugar Bowl kind of on its face and really on the rear of the ticket explains why 56 was so important. Because if you read the back of the 1955 ticket, and when I read this, guys, when I bought this ticket, it was like the first reality moment of Jim Crow and what African Americans dealt with back in the 50s. If you read the back of the ticket, it says this ticket is issued for a person of the Caucasian race, and if used by any other, is in violation of state law. And then it continues to go on to say that you could be arrested or penalized if you were using it that way. I mean, holy moly.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I
written
mean,
on the
it's
ticket.
like
Wow.
black and white, and right there on the reverse of the ticket. And then if you look at the ticket from 1956, now mine's kind of cut off on the top, it's not there. It just says anyone can use this ticket. There's no mention of Caucasian race. There's no mention of any of that. So kudos to the great Bobby Greer for integrating the Sugar Bowl back in 1956. And candidly, guys, there's articles, and I pulled the Bobby Greer article, um, and him at the game. But my understanding is that there were attempts at bans on Bobby Greer playing in the game, and ultimately players said that they were going to sit out, not play. People were going to protest the game if Bobby Greer wasn't permitted on the field. So
Wow.
a very, very significant moment. But at the same time, in my hands, I hold history. I've read that ticket, the back of that ticket, to my son. I've read it to my daughter. I've read it to my wife. And now I'm reading it publicly to all of you. And to me, that's why we're having this show tonight, because this is great stuff. This is history. This is real history.
Yeah.
Tom, my friend, you are up.
I'm up. All right. I'm going to share a couple tickets, and Chase, I think you have one that goes with this, the 1968 opening day tickets. So here is one to the Baltimore Orioles, one to the Washington Senators. Chase has the New York Yankees, and the story here is Martin Luther King's assassination, and on April 9th was MLK's funeral, and MLB did not make a decision. They left it up to the teams to decide if they wanted to play on April 10th or on April 9th. And teams decided to postpone their opening day, except for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who said opening day is going to be after the funeral. You know, we're on the West Coast. The funeral's in the afternoon on the East Coast. It's okay for us. And their opponent, the Philadelphia Phillies, the 5 black players led by Bill White said, we're not going to play if you do that. And they put enough pressure on the Dodgers to get the Dodgers to eventually relent and postpone their opening day. And it's just amazing to me to think about that was the way things were treated, 50 years ago, when I don't think today there would even be a question about it, about postponing that game. So
Agreed.
Again, another kind of slice of history from 1968 that I think all leads into that Black Power salute that we saw at the opening of the show.
Agreed, Tom. Great stuff. Great stuff. And
Yes.
affordable tickets too. So not real expensive. Same with those Sugar Bowl tickets, not real expensive at all. So very collectible. Really could be terrific pieces for any new ticket collector, old ticket collector, anyone that wants to try to put something like this together. Just not real expensive and fairly accessible. Go ahead, Chase.
So the Yankees one happens to be Mantle's last opening day, so it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other ones, but just throw that out there. So I guess my next one, I'm gonna go ahead and show the 1942 Rose Bowl. There's a green version, and here's a brown version. There was also a blue version, which I didn't bring, but. So, the history behind this was it was the first Rose Bowl that was not held in Pasadena, California, because there was a lot of fear that the Japanese would be able to bomb the West Coast. And so they moved it to Durham, North Carolina, and held the game there. And so originally the tickets, and I should have brought one, but I didn't because I have them in all colors. It would have been good to show. But they originally printed them up in these really nice banknote style tickets that were kind of common at the time for the Rose Bowl in the 40s, very kind of like Art Deco type look. And then obviously they became phantoms. They didn't use them, so they reprinted the tickets. They're not. They don't really look at all, these tickets, like other Rose Bowl tickets. They're very kind of plain looking, in my opinion. Just this brown color with the stadium on it. But incredible time. I mean, like, just thinking about that, they were worried that they were going to get bombed, so they moved the game to another location. Kind of crazy to think about. And these, like you said, these aren't that, they don't cost that much. They do pop up a lot. I think a lot of people save the stubs because, you're at a game on the East Coast. It was the Rose Bowl. I mean, a lot of the people couldn't even at the time probably ever think that they would be able to go to a Rose Bowl game. And here they were, in their backyard in North Carolina, able to attend. So, that's a pretty cool ticket. To go along with that, I have a ticket from 1918. It's the Maury Island Marines versus the Yerba Buena Sailors. And so that game was interesting because later on that season, it was the only 2 years that the Rose Bowl was held with service academy teams because of everything that was going on with World War I and the Spanish flu and things like that. They had those games not with the teams that would have traveled from the east to the west, traditional college teams. It was so that ticket actually is right before they shut down part of the season because of everything that was going on with Spanish flu. And then later, the Maury Island Marines actually played in the Rose Bowl. So,
well, that first 1942 Rose Bowl ticket's pretty cool. I mean, they played the game in Durham because I think Duke was in the game against Oregon State.
yeah.
As part of my research for tonight, there's some great pictures. I wasn't able to print one, but there's some great pictures of the Rose Bowl itself empty, but the scoreboard being operated while the game was being played in Durham.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, pretty historical, and like you said, a fairly affordable ticket if you can find it. My next one is a 1971 Pirates ticket, and I got to tell you guys, I looked for this ticket for double-digit years and got lucky finding one. I've only seen one other. Jeremy Shuey has a better copy than I do. But this is a 1971 Pittsburgh Pirates ticket. It's the first time the lineup was made up of all minorities. And it's kind of crazy to think that it took until 1971 in the major leagues for that to happen. But the team consisted of Rennie Stennett, Gene Clines, Roberto Clemente, Willie Stargell, Manny Sanguillen, Dave Cash, Al Oliver, Jackie Hernandez, and ultimately Doc Ellis as the pitcher. So it was the first time there was an all-minority lineup in a Major League Baseball game. 1971, Pittsburgh Pirates against the Philadelphia Phillies. Tough ticket, rare ticket, memorable ticket. You know, many people went to that game. No one thought that was going to happen. And I think there were a lot of players that didn't even realize it until after it happened. And then they kind of all looked around and was like, I think that was the first time it was all minorities on the field at the same time. So I'm sure a lot of people left the ballpark unknowingly that this milestone took place in Major League Baseball history.
I was going to say, was that reported? Was that reported? Did you look at any of the newspaper articles? Was that reported the next day, or did that come out like years later?
Understanding was it came out sometime later.
Okay.
I don't believe years later.
Yeah.
And there was even some question amongst the players, because I think some players had said, no, it had to have happened before then. You know, we were all in the field together. And Willie Stargell said no. In fact, he had thought about it and said it was the first time. This was a milestone. So it's a pretty important ticket. Like I said, I have only seen that one and one other in my years of doing it. I'm sure there's more out there, but pretty cool one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's an amazing ticket.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. All right, Tom, you're up.
All right. So this one, Masanori Murakami's debut, 1964. He had signed with the Giants in February 1964, and they also signed a few other Japanese players. And Murakami actually ended up winning the Rookie of the Year in the California League. So the Giants brought him up, and he made his debut on September 1st. He looks really happy there. And I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for him. He had an interpreter, but the game didn't have the rules and accommodations it has today for people from different countries. And the other thing about this ticket, I found this a while ago, but I didn't submit this. Whoever submitted this decided that Ron Hunt's career home run number 16 was a more important milestone for this ticket than Murakami's debut as the first Japanese baseball player. So this is one of my favorites.
Pretty cool, Tom. And interesting, as part of the research I found, it actually is crazy. So what year was that ticket, Tom?
1964.
Right, okay. So despite Murakami's success, another Japanese native player did not play in the major leagues until when?
Was that who was that? Was that Hideki Irabu?
Hideo Nomo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Debuts for the Dodgers in
1990.
May of 1995. So literally more than 30 years later for another Japanese player to play in the major leagues. Pretty wild.
How about the first Japanese player to hit a home run in the World Series?
Oof. You know that, Chase?
Oh, of course, because I've got the ticket signed. Hideki Matsui.
There you go. See, there we go. See, you could go down all these roads. But pretty
Absolutely.
incredible ticket, Tom. I like that one. I have that one too, and that's a very cool one. Very, very cool. Chase, you're up. We're still moving. We're about 40 minutes in, so maybe we'll do one more round.
This probably be my last. I think this is my last round because I don't know if I have any more tickets after this.
Okay.
But
All right,
yeah,
cool.
I got two at once, so we'll just kind of go with it. I'll bring it back to the Olympics. So 1936 Olympics. I mean, so many different, historic moments at the time. Obviously, they're held in Berlin. You got Hitler, Nazis, all this stuff going on. It was really a Nazi propaganda fest, the Olympics. And I think at the time the U.S. weren't really sure if they were going to participate and go. Obviously, the president at the time decided that he wasn't going to attend, but the athletes could still compete. So, I have an honor pass. This is an honor pass. This is valid for all events of the Olympics. So I'll turn it this way. Um, and it's kind of interesting because it says in German on here, Präsidentin, which is the location of basically the presidential area. So this would have been where, all of the presidents who were invited to the Olympics and attended would have sat for these events. Obviously, the most famous events were, most likely the Jesse Owens gold medals. And I think I brought one other, I think one that's really important to me is the U.S. rowing gold medal in the men's eight. The Boys in the Boat, originally a book and now a movie produced by George Clooney. So I'm not sure if you've seen the movie, but at the end of the movie, and this is absolutely true, Hitler was at the final and he was expecting the Germans to trounce everybody and win, and he was going to celebrate. Rowing at the time was really almost a professional sport. I mean, obviously they used college athletes in the rowing in the U.S., but it was all on the radio and millions of people were listening, and this was kind of a huge event. And obviously the University of Washington crew was ended up selected and went out there and they upset everybody and won. And Hitler's disgusted and kind of walks away from the event, and that absolutely did happen. I mean, he was expecting the Germans to win that event, the 8-man crew, and it didn't happen, and the U.S. won, and so it was huge news at the time, and obviously a slap in the face to Hitler, which is great.
Yeah. Tremendous tickets, honestly, tremendous tickets, Chase, and great stuff. Really important to our country, really important to the history of the Olympics. And again, if you collect tickets that became movie events,
Yeah.
that's a piece of it too.
Yeah, and the Boys in the Boat one, I mean, it's pretty tough to find, I will say, compared to like some of the Jesse Owens golds, which, pop up quite regularly for all different prices. But I've seen tons of them, and a lot of them are graded by PSA. I mean, obviously getting all four is pretty difficult, but yeah, the rowing one just does not show up that often. And so yeah, PSA they did put US gold, the Boys in the Boat, so they put that on there.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Awesome. So my last one is what I would say is one of the coolest tickets around, and that's Rick Monday Saves the American Flag. And, that's a ticket from 1976 when the great Rick Monday sees two protesters, individuals who are protesting the Vietnam War, protesting in our country, go onto the field and try to light the American flag on fire. Rick Monday, in the famous picture, swoops in and steals the flag away before it can be lit on fire, in an incredibly significant moment. I thought I had, I don't, thought there was a picture in the article that said, "Great save, America loves you, Rick Monday," that was put on the scoreboard. And then ultimately, Rick Monday was awarded that same flag, I believe some months later, at a ceremony. And he still owns the flag to this day. But, Rick Monday was kind enough to sign this ticket and, put Saves American Flag. These tickets are fairly collectible, valuable. People covet them, and I think it's a great milestone in Major League Baseball history. But also, if you look at it, you can kind of look at it two ways. Rick Monday saving the flag and being the American hero, but at the same time, people believing that there was enough of a reason to, put themselves on the field and openly protest the country during that time and the fact that the country was at war. So amazing ticket. They come up every so often. I would say whether you're a collector like we are of the social historical moments or not, that's a ticket I think everyone should own if you have the opportunity. It's a pretty cool one. I know Tom has a few more. We're at 45 minutes. I mean, Tom, I think we have we don't want to miss out. So here's some for other people to collect, and we can talk about it maybe as part 2 of the show at some other point. But, Colin Kaepernick kneeling, I mean, a significant moment in the world of sports. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf at some point would not stand for the national anthem and, decided that he was not going to do that. He wound up getting suspended by the NBA for a period of time. And wound up really giving up his entire career as a result. Obviously, there were games that were canceled in significant protest over the Rodney King beatings out in Los Angeles. These tickets are incredibly collectible. PSA does a really nice job on the flips to talk about those and to make sure that those are categorized appropriately. Tom, you know this one. You love this one. Bill White, first African-American announcer in Major League Baseball. Do you have that ticket right handy, Tom? Do you have that one there?
I do, actually, right here. So it's a Boston Red Sox Fenway Park ticket. And I like the link between his protest for the 1968 MLK assassination, and then, here he moves on to this role and then eventually National League president.
And the first African-American to ever hold the role of a league president in Major League Baseball. So Bill White, a pretty important person in Major League Baseball history. Freddie Gray, a teenager that was killed in the Baltimore area, wound up being the following day, because of fear that fans were going to crash the gates at Camden Yards. It winds up being the only game in Major League Baseball history that is attended by no fans. Also a very, very cool ticket. You can find that ticket for $10. And how great is it that PSA slaps it that way and makes it even more collectible? And then the last one too I have is Gene Baker. Gene Baker was a coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Actually wound up being the first African-American individual to manage the game.
You need a drink of water.
I do. So I'm dying here.
I'm going to have a drink for you.
To manage a game in Major League Baseball history, since the white coaches, the white managers were all thrown out of the game, he was left to manage this game to himself at the end.
Oh, wow.
So even PSA puts that on the list.
That's cool.
Very, very cool. Well, guys, what a great show.
That was a lot of fun.
I love the fact that you guys come on. We have a couple of more ideas for future shows. So this is going to be like a 3-part segment. And I'm just so honored always to have you on. So
yeah, thanks for having us.
Guys. Thank you. I know you worked hard. You pulled the tickets. We did some research. We talked about it. A lot kind of goes into this. So thank you for making the time and being a guest on Stub Luv Live. So Tom Daly, Chase Maz, TKD Tickets, Ticket History, episode 49 of Stub Luv Live. We're done.
In the books.
Guys.
See ya.
Appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.